Hi everybody and welcome to another monthly roundtable with Wordlift. Today we have Beatrice and Dave. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Thanks
Absolutely brilliant. We're going to be talking about how the smart ways to create SEO AI generated content that your audience will love. And the idea of this is really to avoid the idea that AI generated content is necessarily spam and that it isn't necessarily the solution to all your problems. It's somewhere in between. And Bea and Dave know absolutely boatloads about this. Everybody who's watching, please do ping in the chat where you're tuning in from. Say hello. We're going to say hello. Bea, could you present yourself? I know you're heavily into punk music. What else can we know about you?
Yeah. Beside that, I am a digital SEO strategist and a senior project manager at Wordlift. I've been doing that for like 6.5 years now. So I really love what I'm doing now.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, Wordlift's an amazing company. I was visiting you guys in Rome and we had such a good time, so many great discussions, so many smart people. And the thing that I noticed is that no two people with the same nationality, with the same first language, with the same roots, as it were, it's incredibly varied and everybody is super smart.
Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant. Wordlift, a wonderful company. And Dave Davies, I know that we always talk about the Kinks. We were talking about the Kinks earlier on with Beatrice, because now every time the Kinks come on, I think first punk song ever, Beatrice. But I also should think of you because your name is Dave Davies and so was the guitarist from the Kinks.
Indeed. Yeah, for folks who don't know, I am with Weights and Biases, the ML Ops company, so I won't be pitching anything because I'm not looking for clients. And although credit to them, and I don't know, Jason, if you knew this before we were sort of like chatting sort of in our prep for the show, but a big fan of Wordlift. And some of the stuff that they're working on right now. So we use them. So that wasn't why I was asked on, but just thought a fun fact for the folks who are listening in.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, we invite people who know absolutely loads about knowledge graphs and AI and the future of SEO and the future of how these machines understand the world. So you fit 100% into that category. Before we get started, a little bit of promotion. You mentioned promotion. We're going to have a little video coming up here to present Wordlift and the Kalicube Pro SaaS platform, which work incredibly well together since we at Kalicube work on the cornerstone entities and Wordlift work from there to build an amazing knowledge graph with their artificial intelligence that you need to grow your traffic. And the Kalicube Pro SaaS platform, we've opened it up to agencies now, so you can manage brand SERPs and knowledge panels for your clients. And included in the agency package is the new knowledge panel course that I have just finished recording, 5 hours of video, pretty much everything I know about knowledge panels. It's absolutely stunning. I'm really pleased with it. And I want to share it with as many agencies as I possibly can because it's so much fun building knowledge panels, what I'm now calling the cornerstone entities, your company, the C-level employees, your subsidiaries, and so on and so forth, which is what you do with Kalicube. Then you can build your little knowledge graph using Wordlift and push all of it into Google's knowledge graph in one big chunk, and it's beautiful. So yeah, bit of promotion there, and we now have lots of people online, so we've wasted the first 5 minutes while people got on board. I'd like to start as quickly as we possibly can so that we've got as much time for discussion as possible with Bea's presentation. And while we're getting that slide up on screen, just remind everybody, please do ask your questions in the chat. Dave and Bea are phenomenally intelligent. They know so much about this. I've got loads of questions. If you've got them, put them in the chat as we go through, and we will try to answer as many as we possibly can. So, Bea, over to you, please, with SEO AI-generated content your audience will love.
Yeah. So yeah, I did a presentation slide. Well, this is me. You can reach out on LinkedIn or on Twitter. You can find in the presentation my details. And as I already said, I will not go through what I just how I just presented myself. So I'll go straight to the content. So I thought I would start from the bad comments, bad reputation of AI-generated content. So Google has been judging most of AI-generated content as spam. So we know that Google firmly condemns spam. But what we have to bear in mind is what we can do with AI-generated content, because without a doubt, it's there are powerful tools using NLG that are very much useful for editorial teams, and so we must always bear in mind the content quality and the tone of voice of content, which are the pillars of whatever editorial team, digital editorial team. So of course, with those two ideas in mind, we can actually use AI-generated content. We have been using it at Wordlift also for our clients, some big insurance companies, Fortune 500 companies. So people in the end do trust, at least they trust us. What does that mean? It means that they trust the humans behind that. There is no AI-generated content without humans. So this is one way to take it. I mean, let's generate content, but let's do it intelligently from the start, like giving the right guidelines, the right validation process, and in the end, of course, what is more important is the human validation. So I tried to think of the most useful ways for content editors to actually use AI-generated content, and there are so many use cases. I just picked 4, and they are the ones that we are also using, so I felt more confident about telling you people about them. So the first one, I started in the order of a value chain of content creation. So starting, of course, from data analysis, I picked the embeddings. They have been of great help to me lately when building a customer journey for one big company that asked us. So I definitely picked that. Product description, of course, is one of the most useful use case. That was the first thing that came into my mind, honestly. Then, of course, FAQs, small snippets of text, straight answers to direct questions, and so on. And then, of course, of creative boost. What does that mean? I think it's important for editorial teams to always be state of the art, like to fine tune with the creativity of the future, because without a doubt, this will be on for many years. So it's important to amplify and constantly look at new technologies and how they can help growing and improving an editorial strategy. So we first look at embeddings, like in natural language processing. The goal is to have machines understand human language. But how can we do that? Embeddings are much useful in that. They are like vectors of semantically similar terms, that they are close to each other. So words that have a similar meaning will have a similar distance in a multidimensional vector space. You can maybe see them from my slide. They might be tiny, but you can see. So in embeddings, similar categories are placed close to each other. So this is really useful to map user intents for keyword based on proximity. And this is also very good at cluster analysis. So clustering queries is strategic to determine what intent we can target with a given web page. What intents should be part of a content hub? how informational transactional intents can be split between blog pages, categories, and product pages. So this really gives us a hint, an editorial hint of what do we need to answer. It's a complete look into an editorial piece of content. So this is also the starting point of natural language modeling, the embeddings, because they detect the proximity between two terms. Moving on, I picked the product description. This is also a real use case from Wordlift. We have this big client that asked us to produce over 1,000 product descriptions for their glasses, and now these product descriptions are actually online, and we are very proud of that, because of course there is a big point here where we didn't use any tool to do those product descriptions. We actually did the work with the in-house technologies, almost like artisans here, because in order to build the right prompt, it took, of course, it's a process. We had a product feed with the products that we wanted to describe. Then we had some actual product descriptions. We needed the more the better, because we needed to feed the model in order to have the right descriptions in the end. Then we needed some examples of the tone of voice of the brand, so social feeds or anything that could help the model in empathize with how the description should sound in the end. And then, of course, we had all the attributes of these glasses, like the name of the model, the brand, the color of the frames, the material, if they were gender, like unisex, female, male, the lenses, the shape, the polarization, and so on. And then we, of course, set a lot of rules, like no repetitions whatsoever, not to use certain expressions, to use proper grammar. And then we customized the model with fine-tuning. So in the end, we started the validation process. But what was the most important thing of all? It's the internal check, the human validation. We had the editorial and product team with us all the time. They needed to be on board from the start, also because they understood that we actually enhanced that work. They provided all the samples, they reviewed the training data sets, shared guidelines. It's like having their job on steroids. So that was really, really important. This is why prompts don't scale. Prompts alone are not the key to scalability here. At least we scaled these product descriptions on over 1,000 pair of glasses, and we noticed that not everything can be automated. You must find the fit for automation. And in the end, of course, we also measured the clicks. In the beginning, we had this 43.7%. But of course, also here, we might not necessarily look at organic traffic. We might also want to look at the actual business value. So you also need to find the right metrics for funding the scalability. We now are moving to FAQs. Of course, questions can be extracted from embeddings, as we saw before, or intercepted from Google search or any editorial team finding. This is a tool that we built at Wordlift. where we give an answer. This summarizes the SERP for the questions that you pose to the model. We've used this for providing clients with semantic briefs that completed their SEO briefs. So this covered what they needed to answer when covering certain themes to make sure that their content were complete. And we also scaled these on 171 annotated questions and answers. So the clicks come from this number of FAQs, and it's a 6 months over 6 months matrix from Google Search Console. Finally, we find the most important, like the heart of this presentation, which is the human-AI collaboration that can actually increase alone the accuracy of AI models, because an AI model would like have the training data and just elaborate it and then produce an output. What we want to stress, what we want to say here is that an AI system takes into consideration a broader range of information about each use case beyond mere prediction that an AI model could do. So we have AI model in the system, but we also have context, we also have tone of voice, then we have the first draft of content, and then we have like the automatic validation and the human feedback, which is the most important. We are in a world that has so many experts, business marketers, who are daily embedding AI into their work practices. So it's most important to always constantly check for accuracy, and in this way, adding the context, adding the human in the loop, it's what really makes the difference into like a seamlessly embedding of AI-generated content in an editorial strategy. Here is a summary of how to play generated content safe. These all points that I have touched during my presentation. We have, of course, text validation, content accuracy, fact-checking by human is essential. Regular content update is like the third main point in editorial strategies, like we have said before, the tone of voice and content quality. And then, of course, regular content update according to your business metrics and business goals. And then, of course, the measurements of success, finding the right metrics. We might not want to scale AI-generated content if it sucks. We want to scale if it works, and we have to find the right metrics to see if it works. So in the end, what are the real benefits of AI-generated content strategy? Good AI SEO practices can help a website rank higher, always keeping in mind which content types to enhance and produce with AI. So we have got the personalization of website content, and the human input always does that thing more to have good quality output. So of course it increases productivity, it produces personalized content, so you can target customer to look at certain copies and have different copies for different target customers. You in the end find out saving cost and time, because of course you cut out on the mundane and routinary tasks for your editorial team. Then, of course, SEO compliance, this can also be done with the guidelines in the beginning when setting up the model. And then, of course, as we found out in the product description slides, you can really boost business value, because in the end there, we got their product team and their business team saying that, giving us real numbers of how we increase their revenues. So there is real value here. Then, of course, better user experience, because it matches with like the target customer based content, and it fit perfectly specific type of content, as we said, with FAQs, product descriptions, and small snippets of text. So this is where I give the pass the microphone to Dave. So just remember to keep the human in the loop.
Right, brilliant. Thank you so much, Bea. Before passing to Dave with the slides, let's just have a quick chat about what you were talking about there. I mean, one thing that strikes me is throughout this whole thing is, A, you're saying we need to apply it to specific types of content for which it is appropriate. And John Mueller seems to be talking about people who are trying to write entire articles using AI and write thousands of articles at a time without ever checking them, without the human in the loop. And the other point is, a lot of what you're talking about is making the user experience better, and it's got nothing to do with Google.
Yeah, exactly, because it's all in the content strategy. I mean, if you have a content strategy, you must not act like it's a different thing. You must like make it yours. This is the key in using an AI model.
Brilliant. Yeah, and Dave, you've got your head really into the AI stuff now, because you've left the SEO community and looking much more at AI pure and, I was going to say, delightful.
Yes.
What's your take from the outside now?
Well, I mean, I still keep my SEO hat on, right? Like, because like I can't help but keep an eye to things. Well, I mean, heck, I'm the like awareness team lead there, right? Like I have to be aware of sort of what's going on. One of the things that my big take is we know how Google feels about this stuff, right? Like we know what they officially say, and yet at the same time they're building models like Mum that are built specifically to do this on their side. So I like what Beatrice was leaning to, which is Google will tell you officially if you ask them, this is a violation of our guidelines, right? Like if you ask them point blank, that's what they're going to say. But they don't actually mean that. I know that when they make that statement, they're going, I know that there's a version of Dave that back when he was getting his start in like 2002 was selling links because we had a green bar called PageRank and he could sell them for $500 a month. Like that's the version of an SEO that they're trying to make those rules for. Not the version that's doing exactly as Beatrice is talking about, which is going, we're actually here to make the experience better, not win at all costs, just make the experience better. Google should reward that. They will, but the loop is circled. The rankings come from making the experience better, right? And I think that's really what we need to be looking at. And what I really loved to hear her talking about was this idea of going, it is better. It just is better. It's why Google's trying to do it on their end. It's why we should be trying to do it on our end. And the alternative is either not having the content or just having some poor drone of a human chunk through this and not do it well, right? Like this poor human who would have to sit there and try and do it, rather than a human going through and spot checking it and making sure that it is doing what it's supposed to do. So I like it clearly, but then as you point out, Jason, I kind of have my head in the ML or machine learning world a lot more these days. So
yeah, I mean, for me, the huge takeaway, I mean, machine learning is, I mean, Andrea Volpini from Wordlift says it a lot. It's dancing, machines dancing with humans, which is a phrase that just keeps coming back for me. And every time I kind of think, oh, I'm just going to click on this button, it's going to magically solve all of my content creation problems. I immediately think Andrea says machines dancing with humans. Let's get the humans involved. And I think Wordlift are very strong with that approach. And also the type of content, and we come back to that, the type of content you can use this for is really, really important. But have you got anything to come back to Dave with on that before he starts his presentation?
No, I totally agree.
Well, everyone agrees. How delightful. This is going to be an everybody agrees webinar. Hello, Corey, who's joined us and said, hello, everybody. So, Dave, what I want to hear now is the really geeky version. For the next 15 minutes from your slide deck that we've seen. So if Anton, you can share the slide deck, we're about to geek out with a real AI expert. Is that what you are, Dave? Or are there other people in your
would
company?
not. You know, because I was brought on as the SEO, like just a bit of background for context for our listeners. I was brought on as an SEO on contract. Now that went well, and now I am the awareness team lead at Weights and Biases. So bigger role, but still heavily invested in marketing. I work with people every day that make me feel like a child when it comes to my knowledge level on machine learning. I was talking to some this morning, right? Like where the knowledge level of the people that I communicate with every day at work is so much beyond what mine is. I can tootle around with models and forecast what my traffic's going to be 3 months from now and those sorts of things, but relative to what they're doing, no, I'm not particularly skilled. But now that said, I do get insights into a lot of things because of the role that I have and the people that I work in and the space that I work in. And one of the things that I think is fascinating, and it's just part of the human condition, is we like people to like what we're doing, right? Like that's just the natural part of things. And to that end, I think we on the outside, and I'm going to include myself on the people outside of the machine learning space, because I'm not a machine learning engineer. I work in a machine learning, like an ML ops company, and certainly probably have tootled around more with it than many, but I'm going to consider myself on the outside and go, it's actually those people on the other side, the machine learning engineers, the people that actually tinker and make this stuff work. They want us to use their stuff. Like they want us to love it. And to that end, they have made it incredibly easy for us to use it, but there's this big barrier to entry. And I was on the other side of it until I went, oh, they want me to use their stuff. Like this is important for them that I use their stuff. I am part of this test group. And so they're going to let me see what's going on. So we talk about all of these models. We talk about them as these big, difficult things to work in. And they are incredibly difficult. Fortunately, the people that went through all of that work are going, Dave, please, Beatrice, Jason, please use a thing, and I'm going to give you an interface to make it really, really easy. You can then do really, really complicated things with it, but I'm going to make it really easy for you to take a look at and get started. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, because what I really wanted to help the viewers and listeners sort of wrap their heads around is, or not, maybe not even wrap their heads around, but give them something tangible to go, okay, I'm going to give you some links and some examples, and you can do this. Like you can get started. Maybe you're not going to be building like these super advanced models using GPT-3, but by the end of this, you'll be able to actually use it to start generating some of the types of content that you're going to want to generate. And you're going to be able to do that with no more tools than a free email account that you can sign up for these services with. And in one case, a cell number is required. So let's dive in. We're going to start assuming that when we're talking about content, we're talking about text, which is not all content, but we'll get to that in just a minute. So the most popular model, and we've all heard it, is GPT-3. So we're going to dive in. We can, you can read that sort of top paragraph if you're really interested in sort of like the nitty gritty of what it is and the type of description I would write at the top of an article on GPT-3 to try and grab a featured snippet or something like that. But when we distill it down, really what it is you give it a text-based prompt and it outputs some sort of other text. I'm really cliff notesing this here, or Cole's notesing it, depending on which side of which borders you're on, which type of books you use to like make Shakespeare make sense. But you give it a directive, or you give it something to work with, and it then gives you text as an output. So what can you use it for? You can use it for things like content creation, summarization, translation. It's basically, I find the terminology in machine learning a little weird, text to text, right? Like it creates text to text transformation. So this is what Beatrice was sort of talking about, is in the assistance that sort of power can provide to your content. So if we can go to the next slide, please.
Do you not have control, Dave?
Yeah. Oh, hey, I do. Wow. See, this shows you how much StreamYard that I'm have used.
Yeah,
so apologies
the
to our listening
wonders
audience.
of modern technology, Dave, eh?
Yeah, I know. We're talking about automating content, and I'm like, oh, I can click buttons and make things happen. Isn't that wonderful? So to get started, if you're interested in getting started, I put them on here. I have no relationship with any of these companies, so this is just like, these are the coolest things that I know of to assist with content here. So you can go over to OpenAI. You can sign up for an account there. You can now access that API. So when I say API, a lot of people are like, okay, that's about to get difficult. Yes, it can, but it doesn't have to. As you can see here, this is called their playground. This is where their examples are. It actually takes you to their playground, and you go, what is the task that I want to complete? And then off you go to the playground. I love the name that they gave it. What we're about to get to is what that playground looks like, and that's where the real power is. So again, imagining you don't have coding skills, you're not Andrea Volpini, you're not about to do some amazing stuff with this, you're just Dave, and you want some help writing some stuff. So off we go, and we're going to head in, and I'm going to either pick a task, or there's actually, I should have included it, a little link up there to the playground, but we're about to see what that looks like. It will help you can see on the left, with content. These are the things that I use for content outlines, writing ecom data. Beatrice, thank you for the example there, but we got to pretend that we're not using it for stuff like that. Translation, powering chatbots, and more, including what we're going to see here is just what I was doing, going, I need some help, fictitious Dave, on writing. Oh, it doesn't work with GIFs. Now that is a shame. So basically what it can do is, you through a series of text prompts, it will actually it will actually take you through, and I started with a series of text prompts, apologies to folks, but what it will actually do is, if you start it with sentences like, you can either give it questions or sentences like, Dolly Mini, that was the one that I was using, or Dolly 2 was I sort of switched back and forth, is used for, and then it will actually just fill in the rest of that sentence. And I can select the maximum text length I want it to use, how much surety, that would be in the temperature, how much surety I want to have. So if it needs to be 100% sure of what it's going to be producing, then it's going to be less diverse in what it might come up with. And then you can basically just prompt it to continue. Like, what are the technical requirements? One of the examples I put in here for Dolly 2, it had then sort of filled in a bunch of stuff, and then it had included with that it needed a bunch of RAM. So it required a bunch of RAM too. I would just fill it, sort of start that in there, hit an enter, and it would then continue on with that sentence. So I'm sorry that it can't come up on the screen here right now. But basically, with about 5 prompts, I was able to write about 500. I was able to write about 500 words of content were generated for me. To produce an article on Dolly 2. I'd also produce one for Dolly Mini. We'll get to what those are in just a second. But basically, I was able to produce a full article. Now, remembering, this is all just drawn from a machine. A lot of it was, no, most of it was factually correct, but there were little spots of incorrectness in there. So you can't just like plug and play GPT-3. It is trained. It is not trained perfectly. It is trained, well, if you imagine, and this is how I like to do it when I'm thinking about models like Dolly Mini, it has used the web as one of its primary resources. Imagine if you just went out, navigated the web and went, everything that I read, I have to assume is equally true. And then you started to put information out there based on that. Mostly you're going to be true and you're going to be right, but sometimes you're not going to be. So apologies, we didn't get a really solid example of it running through there. But hopefully I've managed to convey that in words as well as to be expected. One of the things that I love it for, because we all need to be creative, when we're doing ad copy, you can hit that sort of roadblock. So I've just asked it, I created an example that wasn't from ours, to create some, I told it to create 5 Google ad descriptions for an exciting travel company. And it created me, I could have said 20, I could have said 100 if I'd wanted to. And I even put a character count in there so that it knew to keep it to something that I could do for a Google headline. But again, remembering that it's not perfect, because I believe it actually thought that the company name of my exciting travel company was under 30 characters. So I think that was the confusion that it had there. So it's not perfect, but it's a great place to start when you're looking for new content ideas and you're just hitting some mental roadblocks. I hit that especially with ads, and especially with like responsive ads where I'm like 15 headlines. I love using GPT-3 for stuff like that. But as I discussed earlier, or as I alluded to earlier, not all content is text. So there's also image generation. I love image generation. So here we're looking at just 3 of the most popular models. Crayon, which folks in the listening audience might know as DALL-E Mini. And they ended up changing their name because the fine folks, and I totally get why, at OpenAI, who created DALL-E 2, when people are confusing DALL-E Mini, which is not at all associated with OpenAI, with our own model, DALL-E and DALL-E 2. So they changed the name to Crayon with an AI, which I thought was a very, very good name at any rate. Then there is also Stable Diffusion. And that one was built by Stability AI. Crayon, credit where it's due, was built by Boris Dama. And it's built on JAX over at from Google. So it was actually built, I only mentioned that as a fun fact because it was built part of a sort of like sprint that they were doing at Google, and Boris had built that. And DALL-E 2, which is built by OpenAI, the same folks that built GPT-3 that we were just talking about. So here's some 3 very, very interesting image generation models. Each of these, and the examples I'm using, I put in the same prompt into all of them: steampunk robot painting a picture of itself. And what we've got here is what Crayon produces, Stable Diffusion produces, and DALL-E 2. This is what they produced in trying to do that. It does take some fine tuning. That's called prompt engineering for folks. So where you put in a prompt, tell it what to paint, and then you start adding things to it, comma, realistic. Oh, okay, now it'll turn it into realistic. Or it could have been in the style of Picasso, and then it would be in the style of Picasso, stuff like that. So all of these 3 are free to use as well. I mean, at least as far as getting started with them. So again, these all have interfaces. You can go to these sites and go, like the one at Crayon. I've just created bit.ly links because it makes them a lot easier to get to here. But if you go to any one of these links, basically you just have to sign up and you get started. They have an interface where you just enter in the prompt that you want to. I created all of these images just through their own interfaces. The one that you're looking at right now, for example, I created that right through their own interface. It didn't take any particular skill. I have done some neat stuff with them, but when I just need an image for a featured image or something like that, I go over there. So Crayon is free and unlimited use. In fact, every prompt that you put in, it's going to give you 9 images back. Stable Diffusion gives you 200 free generations. And then it's $10 a month after that. One of the interesting things about that one, and what I really love about Stable Diffusion and Crayon, is that both of them are available with GitHub repos, so you can download it and do whatever you want from there. DALL-E 2 is not. That one is accessed through an API, so there is some stuff you can do with that one as well. But all of them, anybody can use for free to start generating stuff. So things that I've used it for, and successfully, where it beat human-generated stuff in at least some instances, was images for articles, featured images. I use it a lot with ads. Now, I advertise to the machine learning space, so machine learning engineers are used to seeing that. So results may vary depending on what you're doing, but you can create some pretty cool stuff. Social posts, we've created some swag using it. and of course, slide decks. One thing worth noting, however, your images being generated are not copyrightable. So if somebody, one of your competitors, wants to take it, there's nothing you can do about it, but that's okay because it costs you nothing to produce. So that's just a thing to note. Any art built with this stuff is not yours, actually. Just as of the last couple of weeks, we've got text to video. So both Meta and Google are creating, sorry, these could have moved, would actually create video from these little text prompts that they can put in. Meta came out about a week before Imagine from Google, but Google can't pull that off in a week. They were both working at the same time. It was just when the announcements came out. But both Meta and Google are heavily invested in this right now. Meta, I can only assume for the metaverse push that they're going on, and Google just because Google likes to own absolutely everything. So these ones are not free to use. In fact, nobody can use them yet, but they have just been recently released. And I would imagine that we'll be starting to see them entering the ecosystem in the not too distant future. So keep your eyes open for that, because that'll be very exciting when you can start to make some short videos. I imagine that's going to be very impactful in the Google ad space, especially. And these are also not available to the public, at least. One of the things, just a fun sort of like secondary thought is, if I was manufacturing products, if I was Nike, for example, and I wanted to check what types of shoes or what type of product would go very well, I think this is just a wonderful way to not have to actually manufacture anything and then just produce a bunch of different stuff. Have some people sit down, do a bunch of prompt engineering for a few days, create a bunch of different styles of shoes. I would not wear ones that look like this, by the way, and then put those out to the world. And I think there's a lot of opportunities in this from other aspects, but I think just for our use, hopefully we've covered a few decent uses for this that anybody can just jump in on and use as far as automated content creation. So that's it from me. Hopefully I haven't gone on too long.
No, not at all. That was brilliantly interesting. I mean, I love the different examples. Moving beyond text to images and even videos is incredibly interesting. And what kept coming up there for me was prompt engineering. And Beatrice was talking about that earlier on as well. The fact that the prompts are so important. How much do you actually work on the prompt aspect of this, Beatrice, to get things right?
When we worked on the product description use case, we actually adopted an iterative process model. Like we had like the NLG model fine-tuned, and when it was, if it was confident, if the level of confidence for the validation was okay, we would have an output that the human would validate. But then again, if it was not uncertain about the output, we would have a human in the loop to validate the content. And if it had anything that we didn't like there, for example, some words, we would go again to the prompt and set new guidelines. And we actually ended up doing that quite a lot of times. But yeah, we worked a lot on prompts.
Right. And so you end up with a set of prompts for a specific use case for a specific client. And an awful lot of the work is building the prompts. I mean, it brings to mind what I've heard, Dave, is that machine learning engineers spend most of their time just sorting through data and writing prompts, and they don't actually do anything very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the sort of like classic complaints about being a machine learning engineer, right? I mean, you can, and there's some fun memes about it, but you can either spend like 100 years training a model, I'm referring to like accumulated, or like sort of 10 minutes training the model and 100 years labeling the data going in, right? Like, or coming up like doing this like dirty work. And in some cases, it might even take 10 years of like labeling the data, but that's more fun than the 100 years of like tweaking around with the model. and so they'll go that route. So, but yeah, I mean, it's a really rough area. Where I'm glad I don't do it. Where actually having to deal with that side of things is difficult. Like in Beatrice's example, having to come up with the sets of prompts or the way that you would, I guess I'm going to refer to a prompt as any input of data, like any input of textual data. It may not be like a sentence with like where I'm sitting there actually typing stuff in. Any input of data where you're looking for a textual output. Well, I guess it could be image, but in this case, textual. Actually tweaking and refining that such that it works in the vast majority of cases would be incredibly challenging, right? Like, because it doesn't just need to work for machines, it needs to work for humans. Like, I could easily jam this in and go, give me 200 words, has to be 200 words or less because we only have so much space and it needs to include these words and it needs to include this and that. It would be incredibly difficult to do that and go, if I put in a scenario where I put in too much data, I put in too many individual prompts that need to be covered, I put in too many features of this product, how can it still output something that's human readable? Does it know to omit something? Does it know to actually prioritize what's going in and go, I can't possibly do that. I can only take in 5 features at most. And here's the order. Okay, so now the engineer needs to go back and go, okay, we need to provide an order of features and importance. Okay, now we've got that. Okay, now you train it again. Okay, but actually we're trying to write because like grade 5 is the highest reading level. Oh, like that we want to be appealing to because like, you know, we're trying to appeal to people as a whole. Okay, now let's go back. Like actually training the thing to work like that is where the real challenge comes in. And you oftentimes don't end up knowing you're wrong until you see that you're wrong. And then now you need to go back because we all just assume what we assume, right? We're like, I know what I'm building. And then it's like, oh, but when I scale that to 10,000, now we're starting to kick the edges.
Exactly. This is what I was thinking while you were talking, Dave, that once you have a good prompt, a very good fine-tuned model, you can have a great scalability, and you can also like adapt that prompt for I have in mind like promotions. For example, it's Halloween, let's modify the prompt so that it sounds spooky, so then in like a daytime you can have your new SEO campaign. I mean, once you have that, it's an asset.
Yeah, absolutely. And that makes me think about the kind of the tone of voice you were talking about earlier on, Bea. Getting the tone of voice of your brand. I mean, I'm into branding now that I do brand SERPs and not SEO. Getting the tone of voice and then saying, right, now we're going to do Christmas, now we're going to do Halloween, then we're going to do some Valentine's Day or whatever it might be. If you've managed to train the model to represent your brand voice, then you can use machine learning simply to make a big step forwards each time you need to produce new content. My question, actually, having said all of that, was to what extent can machine learning actually imitate my tone of voice?
We did that using empty prompts. I don't want, and setting up like reference models for the NLG. But I don't want to dig into the technicalities. But also because, of course, once a human reads it, if it doesn't click, content doesn't click, then it's not worth sharing. I mean, this is why I said it's an iterative process and iterative work, because you have to not only fine-tune the model, but you also have to fine-tune the editorial team to the NLG technology. This is really important, and but there are some ways also to have the model talk for your brand, to have it as it was you speaking. We referenced, for example, social feeds, anything really that could give the machine like an idea of how it should speak. this is also why we indented so many already existing product descriptions.
Right, brilliant. And that just makes me think of one thing before we come to that question you just posted up, Dave, is that you need a new skill set for the editorial team. You need to train the editorial team in order to be able to feed the machine, in order for the machine to then give them the content that makes sense to them and to your brand and to your audience. And Dave, you were saying, can you give a machine personality? Are you going to answer that yourself?
Well, I think I can. I think it's easier to give the machine a personality than a person. Because you can't give a person a personality. I can't go, I'm going to make Bill, our new employee, speak exactly the way our company does. Exactly. And we're going to use fine tuning to get him, when this prompt comes in, Bill's going to respond this way, right? You can't do that to poor Bill, and that's good. Because everybody would hate Bill. And so this gets to, I think, the bigger question, can it have a personality? No, and I'm not going to go down is AI actually alive, right? No, we're not going down that. So it never has a personality, but so I was sort of tongue in cheeking that, but can it represent your brand? Can it be trained to speak with your tone? Chatbots do it all the time, right? They get trained on the way that brand is. I mean, for large companies, there's some chatbots that are just plug and play, but for large companies that are actually trained on that specific brand's identity. That, if you go to Disney, we're going to be hearing it talk about Mickey and Minnie, right? Those sorts of things. And it'll always be cheery, and it'll this is trained to represent that brand. So yes, they absolutely can. Can they misfire? Sure, but so can Bill. Right? Bill can have a bad day and not have his coffee in the morning, and then Bill's going to misfire when he's on that tech support call. So I think the answer is certainly yes. And if you think about it, it's just natural. When you punch some stuff into GPT-3, it has to have a structure for what it came back with. When I put something into Stable Diffusion, it has to have a structure for what it came back with. It has learned that. So all I need to do is now teach it with my own data. So I can go, okay, here's the structure of how we interact. Here's always the way that we greet people or not, if they're logged in or not, right? We can train it with these things, and it certainly can be taught very, very quickly.
Brilliant. And you were talking about facts with OpenAI. What index of the web do they use? You were saying that it uses the web index to get information, or did I mishear?
No, it does. That is part of what it ended up using. It uses Wikidata for a lot of it. And then there's a couple other. I'll share a link for all of our listeners that actually breaks down what the percentage is that comes from the different groupings. I'll share it into the chat here for us.
Because obviously, we can get the machine to imitate my writing style.
Yes.
The huge problem is getting it to be truthful and not make up information, because the machine doesn't understand that inventing information isn't, when we're writing something factual like a product description, it can't just invent stuff. But it does, Beatrice, you found it. Is there a way to stop it doing that?
You mean making things up?
Yeah, have a prompt that's be honest, be truthful.
Yeah, it depends on which data is relying on. If you have connected to open data sets, then there might be a chance that you might get some outputs that have to be revised. If you're using other kinds of data, like closed data, like we did, maybe the things that it says are not wrong, but there may be some weird repetitions or order of words that, and also having a not correct output.
Right. Okay. Brilliant. So, kind of from that perspective, at all points, I mean, we come back to this again with text. You need to have the human in the loop. And if we move on to images, I mean, I really like the robots drawing of themselves. So, robots draw robots very well. How well do they do with the rest of the world when it's not them? Dave.
They do well. I mean, depending on how you want to think about the word well. Are they great at predicting the mess that is sitting in my head and most human beings' heads? Probably not. Like when you first start to type something in, you're going to be surprised by what it comes out with. And you're going to go, not sure how it got that, but there we go. And then you sort of like fine tune it and it gets closer and closer to something you wanted. It's one of the things that I find fascinating and really useful about using it for inspiration, however. It's the same out of left field approach. Like, I remember when I was very young, well, not super young, like kindergarten, grade 1, so much younger than I am now, and us having to do a test where you couldn't see each other and somebody was giving instructions on how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. This is part of my kindergarten's class, like thing. Right. Somebody had to give you the instructions and you had to do it, but they couldn't look at you doing it. They just had to give these instructions. And the disaster that was every peanut butter and jelly sandwich because they couldn't see what you were doing and what it was. That's sort of what we hit in this scenario, right? Where what I'm saying, I'm not understanding what it's doing. So I'm ending up with a disaster of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but every now and then you figure out how to fine tune it and how to write a recipe. And once you know how to write a recipe, you end up with a proper sandwich, or a sandwich that's much closer to what you wanted, but somebody else made it. So they might've thought, hey, here's what I'm going to add to it. It's what I think makes it brilliant to use for ideation, right? Like when I'm going, okay, I'm out of ideas. Okay, here's what I want, or I don't want to go through iStock photo anymore, right? Because I don't like the stock photos anymore. Okay, I want to come up with something unique. It's great for that stuff.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I hear a couple of things there. One of which is learn to talk to the machine like you would be explaining to a child. So we come back to my favorite child analogy. These machines need guiding, they need educating, they need our input in order to be able to actually perform the tasks we're expecting of them. And the second thing is ideation. I mean, I would never use that word in my entire life, but it sounds very posh and intellectual, Dave. Thank you very much. But the blank sheet of paper is what I use as the example. And it's a terrible struggle for most people. And if you click a prompt and it gives you something, it's really easy to say, that's rubbish. We can do better. And then iterate forwards, as Bea was saying. Brilliant. We've got 3 minutes left. Bea, do you want to make a closing statement of content creation that your audience will love using AI for SEO?
Yeah, I try to sum up the things that I found most useful when I started working with AI. I was also biased and sometimes I still am. This is why I always question, but this is like our job is to question. So this is also what makes things correct and up to what we are and what we represent. So I would say that like in 5 years' time, we will probably rely mostly on the AI generated content. So it's really important, I think, for an editorial team to be up to date. Also, because there is so much content pressure. Also, as we said in the beginning, Google doesn't want spammy content and so on. And this is why it's important to like constantly produce good content. But this does not mean that we shouldn't use AI-generated content.
Absolutely brilliant. That was a really delightful closing statement. I love that. Dave, do you want to make a closing statement other than in the future we won't even need to be on screen because AI will create this video for us and we can stay at home having peanut butter and jelly sandwiches?
I will just, I think Beatrice closed it out super, super well. I think anything I would add would just degrade it. Safe to say, enjoy your creating.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I saw Jeannie was here, Corey, Andre was obviously here, Dave, Beatrice, Anton behind the scenes. I'm going to sing the outro song. A quick goodbye to end the show. Thank you, Dave and Bea.
That's great.
Kalicube. It's all about your brand search.